All right, so safety. It's probably the most important topic that we can discuss right now because if you have a baseline understanding of how to work safe, you're going to have a long, healthy career. But if you don't, and you develop bad habits and you don't care, well, the alternative is not something you want to see because I have seen some terrible accidents in my career, and I don't ever want to see anything happen to anybody. That's why this video is paramount in this course. All right, so I want to cover a few things. First of all, in mining, it isn't like other industries where it's a very special in the fact that safety is more than just words. It's a culture. You have to have a strong safety culture in no matter which mine you're working at. And if they don't, well, then I would suggest finding a different mine. But thankfully in this country, safety is, and mines, they will listen to you and they do take steps to make their mine safe. So the mining companies are on your side, thank God for that. Anyway, every day you're going to have a 5-point card, and it's a tool used to keep you safe. And so don't just check the boxes, don't just pencil whip it, go through it. First thing in the morning, or when you get to your heading, you're going to go through it, and you're going to check, and you're going to go through it, and you're going to go through that card like a fine-tooth comb. You're going to find, if everything's good, then it's good, but if there isn't, you have to correct it on the spot. That is going to protect you, and it's proven. All right, so what gets guys in trouble? What are the actions, what are the things that get miners in trouble in the mines? What gets you hurt? What gets you fired? And those things are complacency. You've done a job for for months, for years, and you just take everything for granted. You just go through the motions. You're pencil whipping off those 5-point cards. You're not doing job hazard analysis. You're just floating. And that's how accidents happen. Complacency is no good on a crew. Guys that work like that. Skipping steps. You know what you have to do. You do that. You scale first. You wash down, or you clean off your deck, or you organize, or whatever it is. Those are the steps that you go through every day. Keep doing that. You keep doing those steps, and that will keep you safe. Don't just put it off. I don't feel like it today. You always do it. That's part of being a professional. And in mining, people see that, it's appreciated. Not speaking up. In the morning meeting, every morning we have a meeting. And if there's a legitimate concern, that you bring it up. Maybe 3 other guys didn't talk about it. Maybe they've just been working with it. But that you can bring it up, and it will be addressed, and it'll be fixed. So don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid at all. And then trying to look tough. Like I get it. I understand. Like you're with guys that are, a lot of miners are, they're tough guys. They're good men. They're stoic sometimes, most of the time even. But if there's something that you're concerned about, don't be afraid to speak up. Don't feel that you're gonna be looked at a certain way. No, not at all. Not on mining crews. We appreciate open discussion. What earns respect? What earns respect for you on the crew? What earns respect for you with the company? And this is important, because number one is asking questions. Don't think that because you come in that you're expected to know everything. You're not. You have to ask lots of questions. keep a notebook with you. It's always good, write things down. But if you have a concern or a question, or you're not 100% positive about the task that you're supposed to carry forward on your lineup, make sure it's clear. Ask your shifter, because believe me, he don't mind. He'll explain it to you. You know, uh, Refusing unsafe work. If there's something that you feel is unsafe in your heart, speak out. I'm not doing it. You know, and it has nothing to do with your the company or your boss or anything. A lot of times, they line you up and they're not fully aware, like they got a lot going on. That's your job. When you get there and you see that, okay, this isn't right, we got to fix this, you bring it to their attention, bring it to your shift boss's attention, and and then make him aware, right? And then it can be fixed. So yeah, don't be afraid to refuse work that you feel is unsafe. And then part of being a solid member of your crew is looking out for everybody. Everyone's got to look out for each other. You gotta be, it's like they say, you're your brother's keeper. If a lot of times, more than one set of eyes goes a long way. There's some things that I can't see that maybe you see. And it doesn't matter if it's your first day underground. Maybe you have a fresh perspective. So if you see something and I haven't picked it out, I haven't noticed it, tell me. You're looking out for me, and I'm looking out for you. And that's how you have a cohesive, solid crew that gets along. Because everybody looks out for each other. Everybody cares about each other. Okay. In Canada, in this country, this is such a great country because we have a right to refuse. So it is legally allowed in this country to refuse work. You cannot be you cannot be blackballed or put on anybody's bad list for refusing unsafe work. If that is a protected right in this country. So you don't have to worry about that. Toolbox talks. Now, a toolbox talk is another important tool that we have in mining, and every morning we have our meeting, and we have our discussions, and we talk about the lineup, what's going to happen, whether between the production crews, the development crews, construction, what all the different departments are doing, and how we're all going to work together to make it all happen together, the cohesive unit. Safety concerns from the day before. If there was any safety reports, any near misses, these are all addressed from the day before. You can bring them forward in that meeting, and we can address them and have a further discussion. Okay. Once that's done, if you have any questions, anybody has any questions, that's the time to ask your questions. And once that's been worked through, then we can go to work. But every morning we have our toolbox talk, and it's one of the most important parts of your day. In participation is obviously it's encouraged. Get involved. Always get involved. Always try to help out in any way you can. Now, your PPE obviously is from collar to collar. As soon as you get underground, you have that PPE on, and that is obviously your hard hat, your safety glasses, keeping them clean. Earplugs, ear protection gets loud. Sometimes you'll need double hearing protection, and sometimes them scoops are screaming loud. You're gonna have your earplugs and your earmuffs on. Your full coveralls, sleeved up, good pair of gloves. Proper, your muckers, your proper boots, CSA approved. If you're working in a shaft or in the raise, as a raise miner or a shaft miner, you're going to be wearing a 5-point harness. Or if you're working out of a man basket, You know, you're gonna have to have a 5-point harness on with a lanyard, and you're gonna be tied off. Lots of mines, the rule is 6 feet off the ground. Something to keep in mind. Uh, Near miss reports. You know, if anything happens, if you see anything that anything might have happened, report it. Always report it, because the small things take care of the big things. If you report all the small things that you see and everybody else does and takes responsibility for reporting those, then you prevent a big a big incident, and that's just proven. It's proven in the mining industry and in all industries. You always that's why we have near miss reports. Report your incidences. And then finally, it's mindset. You gotta, you know, underground. It's not, you're not in a warehouse. You're not, working at a Starbucks. This is very serious. Everything underground is big. Everything is either made of rock or it's made of steel, and you are the softest thing down there. And you have to look out for yourself, and you have to look out for everybody around you. You gotta assume that everything underground is actively trying to hurt you. And if you respect, you respect the gear, you respect, the the rock, you respect, you know, you know, gravity in general. The ground conditions are always changing. You keep your ears open. If you hear a lot of popping and cracking, that's okay. That that's pressure coming off. But if you hear big booms, that you've taken that might be a large seismic incident. And that has to be reported too. Um, Explosives, so equipment, everything down there is designed to, end your life if you're not properly trained, and you're not ever vigilant, and you're not, you know going through those steps and working safe. All right, respect everything down there. That's all I have to say about that. All right, thank you. Bye.